Hi, today I will be talking about the uses of data in urban planning process. So this is the first subunit of Module 1, Uses and Sources of Data for Plan Making. So I would like to start with the dialogue from the Tragedy of Macbeth, William Shakespeare, Act 1, Scene 3. If you can look into the seeds of time and say which grain will grow and which will not, speak then to me. Here, the dialogue in Macbeth, looking at a handful of seeds and saying which ones will grow, is a metaphor for predicting the future. So here, the seeds become a metaphor for all the potential events, some of which will happen and some will not. So what is its relevant as planners? Can you think? So it's a deeper and more powerful way of saying predict the future. As planners, we are constantly looking for cues to understand the past and present to predict the needs of the people in future. So the needs could be for infrastructure, such as housing, transportation, jobs, and public health and security, etc. And by engaging in these needs as planners and understanding these needs as planners, we can secure the future of the citizens of a place or region or country. So how do we do that? How do we exactly know the past or the present and predict something in the future? It is always through data that we can know it. So, talking about the use of data a little bit more, planners use demographic data to understand current conditions, for example. Planners use past trends to predict future needs of its resident, which I was just talking about. And the different types of data the planners usually use is not limited to these, but also much more than what we can sometimes imagine, of which I will be talking about a little bit later. But let's see what are the common data types that planners are using. For example, they're using total population size, rate of population growth, age distribution, sex distribution, marital and household rates, educational attainment, health and mortality, place of birth or prior residence, income and employment. So these are all the different types of data planners are using constantly to understand the different aspects of housing needs or transportation needs, jobs, public health requirements, etc., that we just talked about. And then talking about the data beyond these data types, it could be, different social media data, different types of internet generated, ICT generated data types. But we can talk about those later in our, course. But at this time, we are going to know these standard data types and restrict ourselves to see how we can use the standard data types to know a community. So how do planners use these data? So planners may try to use, population data to understand the land use needs that they need to meet in the future. Or if they have to understand the funding and distribution of any kind of limited resources. For example, if they get a funding and they have to distribute it for different aspects like, say, housing or education, they need to know how much money is going to which category of help. And then demanding or forecasting public programs, local services, housing, etc. So as you can see in this slide, these are just snapshot of different types of data analysis. So for example, one on the top left shows ownership versus rental of a particular place in 2010 census. And you can see from the infographic that there are more number of renter occupied than owner occupied. And it's also written like 51% renter occupied and 49% owner occupied. Planners are also using data, for example, in this figure on the bottom right, the city of Birmingham's housing unit occupancy. So we can see that 82% of the housing units are occupied and in Birmingham, but there are 7% that are vacant, and then there are 2% they're for sale, and so on and so forth. So these are the types of data the planners are using to project the needs of the people or needs of the neighborhood. And these can be presented in different ways, and that's what we are going to learn in this class. To talk about the different sources of data that we will be using in this class, as I mentioned, that we are going to restrict ourselves in this class to some standard sources of data that planners are constantly using. Although there are multiple other sources of data I just talked about, like social media data, any kind of data that is generated by the internet and communication technology. But we are trying to restrict ourselves here with the the Census Bureau data, the data from Labor Statistics Center for Disease Control for different kinds of public health data. Then we get the, state registries of birth, death, migrations, and illness to understand mortality, to understand mobility of people. Then we also have for international, data sources, we do look at World Bank open data source, and then international census and statistics is available in different, organization website, which we will be briefly talking about in this course. Now I would like to talk a little bit about how demographics do collect information. Irrespective of different countries, we can say that they collect information primarily in two ways. Through public registries. Most countries have a public registration portal where people register birth or death. And so here, this is just a snapshot in this picture of birth registry. And then the other way of collecting data is through survey. Usually it's like a census survey. There is a snapshot of a census survey form on the bottom right corner. And then these kind of surveys are used to understand how many people are living in a region, the population of a region, or their age group, what kind of jobs they have, what is their race. And so this is done every 10 years in US, and in most other countries also it's done, at a given or a fixed time interval rather. And usually it's a 10 years interval, and US it's done like every decade, for example, in 2010 or 2020. And then the in-between years, we do some predictions and extrapolation to understand if the population will rise or if the population is falling based on the past trend. which we would be talking about in other modules. So moving forward, I wish you to go into the subunits of Module 1. The more subunits, there are different exercises, there are different lab exercises, there are different resources where you will understand the process of the data usage in day-to-day life of a planner even better. So thank you.